Welcome back to Beyond the Wrench. My name is Jay Goninen, and I am your host. On today's show, we welcome Ryan.mack from Milwaukee Tools. Ryan is a product manager with Milwaukee, and I think what you'll see as we go through this podcast is that he's a lot of fun to talk to. This will be really, really easy to listen to. I know we've got a ton of Milwaukee fans that listen to the show. I know a lot of my friends are fiercely loyal to Milwaukee Tools, not only in our trade, but the other trades as well. And I've been excited about this conversation. So welcome to the show, Ryan. How are you?
I'm good, Jay. How are you? And thanks for the great introduction, and excited to be here. It's gonna be a good one.
It is going to be a good one. I'm pumped. I think this might be one of the first ones that all of my friends in the other trades listen to as well, because I think they'll be very, very excited. I know over the weekend we just had a couple projects that I had used a whole array of Milwaukee Tools on, and it is nuts, the evolution of it. And that's stuff that we're going to talk about on the podcast today, because there's just a tool for everything right now.
Yeah, and if you think of the evolution, it's a journey that doesn't end for us. There is no end game. Like, how do we continue to push the bounds, make the best product? And that's what really excites us to be Milwaukee Tool, excites us to be here today. And I think we'll talk about it a little bit later, but really grounds us into some of the following we get and the people that get excited about the brand and who we are. So it's cool.
Yeah,
it's a really
absolutely
fun place to work. Sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Now, before we get on to the Milwaukee Tool story, I want to start with your story. You're a product manager at Milwaukee Tool. Does that mean you're carrying on one line, or does that mean, give us an idea of what that means, being a product manager at Milwaukee?
Yeah, so for us, man, how to define a product manager? Kind of wear a lot of hats, but at the end of the day, what really defines a product manager is we're the one that's in the field. We're the ones working with engineering and the user and bridging that gap. So we go out and understand, hey, what does this product need to be able to do? It might start with a white piece of paper. It might be we have a product we want to life cycle and create a next generation of. Go out and understand what are the problems in the field and what does that workflow look like? And then how do we deliver problems to a really smart group of engineers that allow us to then go create solutions based off problems that we find, and be able to deliver those then back to the user. So we get to see this thing from the very beginning. It might be a piece of paper that we start with, to we get prototypes, to multiple different prototypes, and there's always users giving feedback along the way. And then we get to see the other end of it, like when we're at trade shows and talking to users and showcasing it there, when we're selling it into different places, our distribution partners, and kind of get to see the 360 side of it. So, but it's really cool. And every product manager, depending on the focus, right? We have a lot of different focuses, and we don't distract from our focuses. So if we want to be like, hey, we want to go after this new space, we typically hire incremental people to go after those new spaces, versus hey, we're going to take a team and go segment it, make another team smaller. No, we're all in. We're going to go take the people that we have and add on to the team, and then go put a priority into that space.
So was this something that you always had aspirations to do, or how did you end up at Milwaukee?
Yeah, so I went to Ohio State for college.
If you hear me, that there's a small, as a Badger, that there's a small boo coming in the background here. That's all right, though. It's all right.
Yeah, it was a really good place to go to school. It was really fun on football Saturdays. But I grew up in a small town. My parents owned a company, so I always had tools around. They had rental properties they fixed up, so I kind of built this business background, and always knew I wanted to go into business. And then when I was at a career fair, I ran into Milwaukee Tool. I was like, oh wow, that'd be really fun to go work for. So threw my name in the hat, and then worked through their leadership development program, multiple different roles in the company. I've done sales, product marketing for different business unit, and our accessories business unit, done channel marketing. And then kind of moved over to the power tool side, and started doing what we classify as transportation maintenance product management.
So what was your degree in at Ohio State then?
It was business administration, actually. So business administration, and then I minored in economics, actually.
Wow. And so it kind of tied everything together, right? You got that business background along kind of with your passion of what you enjoy doing. And then this tool company that has been around forever comes knocking, and you are able to get your foot in the door. And what I think is so cool and underrated about a company like a Milwaukee Tool is that leadership development program, the amount of intentional training that starts off with, right? And it's not only product knowledge, but management knowledge and leadership knowledge in general. There's a lot that goes into that when you first get started, isn't there?
Yeah, and it's really cool because we break it down into small portions for everyone, right? So you start out and you're working in kind of that entry role, and it's really just teaching you how to talk to people, how to start to sell the product, how to start to engage with users, and what is that kind of the basics, let's call it. From there, you have different paths. You can go to management, you can go to sales, and then you start to build that big book of business around like your own, where do you want to be and who you are, and you can start to choose your own individual and unique path. So as long as you continue to do the right things and work hard and all the things they tell you to do in college, which is true, but the more you continue to do those things, it continues that brand and your knowledge, and then you can continue to move throughout the company wherever you want to go. Even if you want to take a hard right turn and be like, I'm in product marketing, I want to go to operations, like, hey, that path is probably here for you. Or if I'm in marketing, I want to go to sales, or sales and come to marketing. Like, all those paths are available, as long as you're willing to like stick it out and work hard. And at the end of the day, for us, it's how do we listen to our users the best and making sure we're providing that Milwaukee experience every step of the way.
Which part was the most surprising to you in terms of difficulty? Was there a segment, where you got into it and you're like, I would have thought this would have been a little easier?
No, they all propose unique learnings. Like, they're all fun. They're all come with like the challenge of like, hey, we're going to push you pretty hard and make sure like you're doing the right things, but we're going to challenge you as a company. And it's pretty cool because you continue to grow. And if you're not challenged, you're not really growing. So like always being a little bit challenged and having a really good leadership team that's like, hey, like, this is what I'm struggling with. How would you approach it? Now they can give insight and kind of help you through those situations. So it's a really interesting place. And I can't, to answer your question specifically, I don't know if I can say one was like the hardest or anything like that. There's roles where I've learned the most and felt like I got the least amount of done, but I learned the most personally and professionally. There's roles where we did a ton of stuff and like I definitely learned, but it's like, if without that background, I would not be where I am today because of it. So it's definitely really unique learnings and super fun to engage in.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And Milwaukee Tool itself has been around forever, right? It's been something that I think I still have a Sawzall from my grandfather who's passed away 20 something years ago. That was one of the things I inherited from him. So like when you think about the history of Milwaukee Tools as a whole, it's got a rich history. But I think the thing that's been surprising to me and to a lot of people in the automotive and diesel world has been the evolution of the tool to fit our industry. And I think that's been one of the coolest things. And it sounds like maybe there was some intention behind this, right? You wanted to grow that segment of your market, and it's worked out really well.
Yeah, man, that's a lot to unpack. So I'm going to try to take it on a little bit at a time.
That's my fault. It's a terrible question.
Good.
It was really long-winded.
Ask some questions along the way, please, so I don't get long-winded here. No, it's actually, so this year, in 2024, it's our 100-year anniversary. So we started in 1924. And I'm going to start back there, and we're going to work our way forward.
Please.
To answer the last part of your question. I think that'll be the most valued part. 1924 is really we got started. We got started in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, really making solutions for the production line. If you think the automotive boom was happening in the 1920s, no one was making like tools dedicated for those things. So we started making things like a hole shooter for drilling holes in sheet metal for the production line. That's really how we got our start, through that industrial revolution phase and, growing automotive market in the is it the 60s when the residential boom started to take off? Like Milwaukee Tool has transformed multiple times, but in, that residential boom that happened, you started to see Milwaukee Tool change its approach. It started to be about, hey, we're going to go embrace this revolution that's happening around the job site and the residential construction market, making things like the Sawzall, starting to make things like hole hogs and hole shooters and things for that industry. And that's really what, these are some really iconic sub-brands that, are out there today. The Sawzall, like you just talked about, is one of those things that everyone in theory has. And you fast forward to probably 2008, in that time frame, there was a lot of changes at Milwaukee Tool. We're purchased multiple times, sold multiple times. We really didn't have much of an identity at that point, but we had a really strong brand loyalty back to the mechanical user, electrical user, and plumbing user. It's where our heritage really was. And in 2008, we got acquired by Tektronix Industries, and they came in and instilled this really strong leadership team. And they brought a vision in place that we were going to dominate cordless and be the innovation leader in cordless technology. So from that standpoint forward, you had the launch of M18, you had the launch of M12, and I kind of missed a point here. We had a really strategic patent from earlier in the 2000s around lithium ion. So we were one of the only ones to be able to leverage lithium ion tools during that time frame. And they came in and create this focus around the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing user. And that is really what has started to build the brand you start to see today, even within the automotive group, or transportation maintenance as we define it, which is just the maintenance of things that move. But we started designing things around the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing user, things like, high torques for putting pipe flanges together. You've got cordless Sawzalls. In probably the 2016 phase, we started to launch in 2012 fuel technology. It's the best of the best. It was our best batteries, motors, electronics combination together, and it created these products that were unbelievable. You could now take a Sawzall, that cordless Sawzall, that is cut faster than an AC one. You had cordless drills pushing the boundaries, drilling 1-inch auger bits back in the 2012. And in 2016, we started to see this like surgence of like people posting online, like automotive mechanics, diesel mechanics, publishing online and creating forums and putting feedback like, wow, have you guys tried this cordless Milwaukee stuff? It's pretty good. And we're like, whoa, we designed those for somebody else. But like what I like to say is like, if you go design the world's best high torque and the world's best ratchet, those are things that are going to be adopted across other industries. And transportation maintenance for us, or the automotive user, we started to see that crazy adoption. And at that point, it was a huge inflection point for us. It was, hey, we were seeing it, we could embrace it or kind of deny it. And as a company, we embraced it and said, hey, this is starting to happen. Let's go all in and start to understand what else is in this user group. And there's a lot of ideas out there that came out of that. And you kind of see the progression to where we are today from that, of continuing to focus on tools and making them not only more powerful, but chasing that pneumatic hose, eliminating that hose in the shop, really focus around how do we take that shop and that technician that's in the shop, make that person not only more productive, how do we make them the most productive they can be versus pneumatic or even any other incumbent product in the space, whether that's a hand tool, a pneumatic, whatever it is. and increase that tech productivity. So not only make them more productive, but then let's also make them safer by eliminating a lot of those pneumatic things that are in the shop, a lot of trip hazards, and things like that. Sorry, I think I just took 20 minutes there.
No, I love it. I love it. And I love the fact that a lot of this innovation stemmed from the battery technology. And of course, now when you look at that, you say, well, that's obvious. You know, why wouldn't we have gone that route? And I think what we forget about is how different of an idea it was at the time. And I think a lot of times we were used to maybe that cordless drill that didn't have the greatest battery and wasn't all that reliable, to now where this battery technology has enabled you as a company to really dominate this part of the industry. And I think it's, you know, when I say this, it seems so obvious now that in order to do all of this, you needed the battery technology to be there. But going through that period of time, I think at the time you're like, yeah, there's probably going to be advancements in technology, battery technology, but I don't know what that's going to mean. And, you know, will this stuff ever be able to have the torque we need it to have? And, you know, there was always this skepticism. So I give the leadership team at Milwaukee a lot of credit for pushing forward with it, because it's a large investment to get that technology. And it's a large investment to even have a paradigm shift within the trades to be able to embrace this type of technology to where it's at today, where it's almost, when you're talking through that, almost like a new startup at some level, where you get that excitement and you see all of the viral videos that go as a result. Milwaukee was able to take a traditional company and still get that same kind of excitement behind it, which is mind blowing to me.
Yeah. And I guess a couple of things to unpack, like what you brought up is like, it's crazy that's what the company did. I think it comes down to really like what we're able to deliver for the user. Like, if it wasn't driving that productivity, if it wasn't driving, you know, the value back to them, we would not be here today. And when we can do that, and that's why it always and will always remain our focus, is that user. And it, you know, whether we're focused on mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, and, you know, that we still dedicate a ton of resourcing and dedicated product managers and salespeople to that, or as transportation maintenance or the technician, and having that laser focus on them when we're developing select products to make sure, hey, when we make this product, it's very dedicated to them, and we got to make sure that it's delivering those benefits that they're looking for and maximizing their work output.
I've got to imagine you've been there for 11 years now, right? 11 years roughly?
Yeah.
11 of the 100 years, the amount of progress that you've seen in that 11 years has to just be insane, right? Like, even from back in 2013 to now, a lot of changes.
Yes, there has been what I would call a lot of very disruptive things that hit the market. So I'm going to like kind of on that history tour, right? Like I'll unpack since I've started in 2012. So since I started basically day one of us launching the first fuel M18 drill. So That was really cool. From there, you had us launch high output batteries. So taking battery tech to a whole new level. So that was awesome. You've seen us launch things like machine learning, which just happened last year. So those are just like 3 simple ones that have happened. But the evolution of technology along just that time frame, from, hey, we're going to run brush motors to brushless, to then different battery tech, to leveraging AI, just shows like how we look at it in a way of, hey, there's always disruption around the corner, and how do we ensure we're leveraging those things to make sure we're providing that benefit to the user and maximizing what they're doing.
So how do you do that? How do you get that feedback in a usable way that helps you improve the product line?
Yeah, so everything for us starts and ends with the user. And that's like not a joke, not a lie. Like, as a product manager, we spend a lot of time probably 50% of our time is in the field. The other 50% is working internally. So, and basically taking that feedback and ensuring that it aligns with what the group of teams we're focused on is working on. So when we're in the field, it could be very surgical. We could be very targeted at, hey, we're trying to develop a product. But we could also be out there just exploring and watching, hey, what is the workflow in this shop? What is happening? What do we see this group of individuals doing? And then there's a lot to be learned, not only from like asking questions, but even observing. So understanding, hey, what's that full workflow look like? And then we have a multiple series of, engineering teams that you can work and engage with to understand, depending on what the problem is and how open, I would say wide open it is, and how they can help us scope it in, and what technology we have versus we have to go develop serves that kind of that idea or that concept.
So when you're walking into a place of business, how do you select what kind of business you're going to walk in on any given day, right? Like, is it just you walk into a shop and you say, "Hi, I'm Ryan from Milwaukee Tool. I'm going to watch your people for a day," or walk me through that part?
Yes, that has been done. We have just walked in. That is very possible. You might see me out in the field just walking into your shop. I'm very polite when I walk in and just ask if I can go to the back and talk to the guys in the back. But for us, it starts with like the focus. Typically, it's led with what NPD project we have going on and understanding that. And then, we do develop and have relationships in the field, existing relationships that we like to leverage, but we're always looking to understand from the person that hasn't used Milwaukee or is still very highly focused on leveraging pneumatic, like, hey, what's their feedback? And trying to, work with the shop. So, but it starts with what are we focused on from that product, and then identifying what types of shops will use it, and then continuing to narrow that down and finding the right people to work with that are going to leverage that product.
Interesting. And how do you translate that to the engineers then, right? Because a lot of times I've got friends that are engineers that think of things differently, right? They think of it in functionality. They think of it in a number of different ways that maybe the normal person doesn't.
Yeah, so it all starts with the user, but it starts with like everything's in just words, right? We call them user needs, and then we take those and stack those a layer deeper, and then we work with the engineering team to define those needs into something that's a little bit more tangible for them, and then once we make it more tangible to them, then we can all speak on the same language. So the first couple months of a project are everyone kind of aligning on what are those critical talking points that we're going to leverage throughout it, and then those things can change as we learn and scale, but it always starts with, hey, what's happening in the field, and how do we translate that back into, how everyone internally, whether it's engineering, marketing, whoever is involved, can all speak on the same language.
I think early on in my career, that was one of the biggest surprises to me, is that not everybody was like me. Not everybody had the same personality. Not everybody had the same type of thinking. And when you talk about getting those same people in the room, and you're bringing marketing into the room, you're bringing engineering into the room, sales into the room, you have a lot of different ways of thinking about a certain product. How does it not just stall out? Because when you're coming up with these ideas, some of them had to have been kind of out of left field and just became awesome tools, but I'm guessing it's not as easy as it sounds.
No, it's definitely not. But if we step back to your actual first question there, which is like, it's not as easy as it sounds, and like you have all these personalities, it's either a strength or a weakness. We view it as a strength. You put a bunch of people with different opinions into the same room, and at the end of the day, that'll strengthen what we can do as a brand and as a team and as an individual working team. As long as we continue to allow each individual's opinions to be heard, and not all of those things might make it to the table, but they all have to have a seat at the table and being able to be heard and felt like they're part of the team. When that happens, we can do phenomenal things as a company. It's just like one of the grounding things I always try to leverage is what is the question we're trying to answer as a group, and stay focused on that question. Can we answer that question? And if we can, we're going to be set up for success as a team.
It's such a good point. And having kind of that safe place where even if you do have differing opinions, that you feel comfortable bringing that opinion to the table and aren't just kind of hiding under your desk, right? You're actually bringing that thought, and hopefully that creates some form of brainstorming or at least some type of education back to you so that you understand why they're thinking a certain way. Not that they have an opinion, but maybe some depth behind what that opinion actually means.
Yeah, and hopefully those individuals have proposals like long term, right? Like they understand, are as intimate with the product that we're trying to create as the product manager is. That's the ultimate objective, right? We want them to understand the product as well as we do, and are as intimate with it as we are. And they're the ones coming with the ideas and the proposals of what needs to happen to then influence that user at the end of the day.
The Bureau of Labor Statistics says technicians make around $46,000 a year. Does that sound like BS to you? We thought so too. At WrenchWay, we work with some of the best shops and dealerships across the country, and we've seen technicians make a lot more than that. So we decided to gather our own data. We're excited to announce the launch of our new online technician pay tool. You can now search technician pay by industry, shop type, location, and experience. We've already had over 3,000 technicians submit their pay data anonymously. You can explore the pay data and even submit your own data anonymously at wrenchway.com/pay. Thank you for your continuous support of WrenchWay as we strive to promote and improve automotive and diesel careers. We couldn't do it without you. How do you determine whether you want to focus on something new or maybe improving a current product, or, is it kind of a combination of everything constantly? I feel like for me anyway, and the way my brain works is I would constantly be looking at like, what can we do new? What can we do new? What can we do new? But I think over time, Milwaukee Tool has proven that you've bolstered your current lineup as well. So doing almost both in conjunction has been, from an outsider's view, very, very impressive.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's a journey for us, right? The journey's never over. There's always going to be a problem that we can go solve, and finding that balance of, hey, when do we life cycle versus when do we create something new, really comes down to what's the biggest learning and the biggest opportunity that we can solve for. When we understand that and are able to listen to the people in the field about what's happening, and leveraging some of the internal data we have, leveraging what we're learning in the field, now we can make an informed decision about what's the right next thing to go do. But it always starts with what's happening in the field, what's happening with the user, what's happening in the shop, what are some of the industry trends happening, and making sure that, hey, those are the people at the end of the day that are ultimately kind of making the decision for us. And just being informed isn't just enough for us. We want to be very intimate with what they're doing, how they're doing it, and what's happening in their day-to-day life that we can help make those informed decisions with.
That's very cool. I'm geeking out over this because I absolutely love it. And when we talk about the new tooling, I know for me anyway, there's been a number of things that you have come out with that are things that I didn't know I needed until I saw it on a shelf, right? And it maybe a different way of looking at things. And something like over the weekend, I used a hacksaw on the on an exhaust, right, to cut off. And I don't know if that's the correct terminology for the Milwaukee term of what it is, but I could have easily grabbed a Sawzall, and instead I used that, and I was like, that was phenomenal. I would have probably had no problem using the Sawzall, but that was really, really easy, a little smaller, so it fit in my hand a little bit better. And it's one of those things where I didn't even really know I needed it until it was in my hands, right?
Hey Jay, just how that product came about, right? If you think the Sawzall is typically two hands, you're holding it with two hands and kind of using it. What we started to see and how this the hacksaw got started is we started to see people cut with a Sawzall but hold the material, and was like, man, why don't we make something so they can cut with one hand? And in theory, they're cutting materials, so they don't need like the demolition stroke, the 1.5-inch stroke, or a full stroke Sawzall. And we can reduce the stroke, so cut better, materials better, and then they can use it with one hand, and it'll be a much easier environment for them to cut with. That's kind of how the hacksaw was created. So, like, both of them have a solution or a place in the shop, but we solved the problem of watching somebody, trying to use a Sawzall with one hand and being like, that looks terrible.
It's funny because that is exactly how I used it this weekend, right? It's on my I've got a 1966 pickup truck, and I was there was a piece of exhaust that I needed to trim up, and I had one hand on the exhaust pipe and the other on the hacksaw, and it worked phenomenally. And at first I was like, I'll probably just get out the Sawzall and do it that way. And I'm like, I got to try it. So then try it, and I'm like, that was amazing. That was way, way better.
Yeah. It's the little things that when you step back as a product manager and you look at those things, you're like, that's the really fun thing that keeps me here or keeps me excited to coming to work. And it's also the things that like we can make somebody's life easier. Like, that's phenomenal.
Has there ever been a tool that you saw come across that you're like, I don't know if anybody's going to use that, and then when it gets out to market, you're like, oh my goodness, that is way more popular than I thought?
Absolutely. I've seen a few of them that tremendously surprised me. And it's the coolest thing in the world. We're like, oh, wow, I didn't think that one would happen. And then, everyone's using it. You're like, all right, now I got to try it. But then you start using it yourself. You're like, oh, man, this is really nice. Like the little 3-inch cutoff tool, that is like one of my favorite tools to be able to use. It's just so nice to be able to cut materials kind of like one hand. And like I have a Sawzall and a hacksaw, but like I always find myself looking for something like that. It's great.
Well, and I think the functionality of it too, when you take a step back and maybe think, in our case, in a shop current day versus again 20 years ago, 10 years ago, it cut down on noise dramatically too, right? Because the compressor isn't running as much. You don't have that just general air noise that you used to have. It's just a quieter shop now. It's a lot easier on your ears. I know that. And I do think there are other benefits other than just the functionality of the tool itself, right? The just being able to not trip over hoses all over the shop. There's so many benefits that when you take a step back and you're like, I don't know why. Like I would have seen the value in it 10 years ago that I do now. It just seems so stupid to look back and say, this is amazing stuff.
Yeah. And I think sometimes this, like as a consumer myself at times, right? Like sometimes you just have to try it. And I think the evolution of cordless tools has been on this crazy projection for a while now, and how technology is evolving and how do we keep up with it. And then you got to also like say like, hey, not everybody is the first adopter. Hey, this thing's out. That's really cool. Let me go purchase it. I think you have like your secondary, your third adopters. And for some people, they just have to try it. Like, unless somebody else in the shop has it and they see it and can try it, they're like, man, I'm not going to buy that. I don't know if it's going to do what I want it to do. But the moment they try it, they're like, oh, crap. And, sometimes just trying it once isn't enough. Sometimes they got to try it for a week and they're like, okay, I see what everyone's saying.
Well, I think our entire industry was that way for a long time with Milwaukee, right? You'd see Milwaukee occasionally in a shop. A lot of times it was a corded drill or that corded Sawzall, whatever it might have been, but it wasn't like commonplace. And this is just, again, kind of an outsider's perspective from my time in shops. And now you go into a shop and most shops are filled with Milwaukee. It is everywhere. What I mean, we talked about the battery technology and really what that allowed you to do in our industry. But what was it that really kind of led to that overall adoption of Milwaukee Tools in shops?
Whew. I mean, I think some of the best marketing always is word of mouth. And I think you look back at the trajectory when we launch a product and it does what it says it's going to do. And you have people creating social media posts about it. Um, so like, hey, that's driving the demand there, right? I think then you take some of our distribution partners who have supported us and we've continued to work with and become really good partners with, that really helps. And then we also just are working on creating a team that's focused on, demand creation. They're going to be Milwaukee advocates. They're in sales, but, they're distribution neutral. And they're just going to go in and, showcase Milwaukee products to, kind of sell the brand and showcase what the brand can do for a shop or for an individual technician. And all those things, you start to combine all those things together, but it starts with, hey, the product has to do what it has to do or what the user intends it to do. And then, you start stacking all these things together and how we can look at it 360 from a commercialization perspective. And that's where it really starts. And, it's a journey. Like, didn't happen overnight. I mean, it's taking us, 10 years to even like get to where we are today in this space. And I think the journey's just getting started. Like, you look at a service technician for a passenger car, right? Like, hey, we have several different ratchets, several different impact wrenches. We just launched a new Insider that, revolutionizes the ratchet game for people, pass-through capabilities on select sizes, right? Hey, that market is probably more, pro cordless and more pro Milwaukee than somebody like a collision person or a collision shop, where there hasn't been as much of the technology and push. And those individuals and technicians still use ratchets today, but no one's created like a true DA sander as they classify them, or a 6-inch random orbit sander. But like, we just released one for them. So like, adoption curve still out, ton to learn in the space, but how do we understand those things and see the trends and progression that happen in the space? It really comes down to making sure the tool does what the user wants it to do.
I was just going to say that it's not a coincidence that Ryan.mack came along around the same time that the automotive and diesel space took off with Milwaukee. It was around the same time. I do think it's interesting in that, in a lot of ways, I always feel like we thought like the impact could be something that you do. The impact gun would be something that would make sense. But when you look at an air ratchet, I don't know that, for me anyways, that I even thought about being able to have a battery that small that could also be that torquey or that powerful. And I personally have one, and it's amazing. And, the 3/8, I think at times you almost have to be a little careful because it could be too much torque, right? And so you kind of have to get used to how much torque that has. But it is really, really impressive. And I think for the general public was probably hard to wrap our brains around the fact that that was even possible.
Yeah, I think like technology has come so far. Like, you go back to when we first launched our first ratchets, probably 2015. We launched the M12 fuel ratchets, standard versions in 2017. And, when you go from just a brush product and we can stack our fuel technology and pair it with the best electronics, the best motors, best electronics, or best batteries, sorry. What we can do from a performance standpoint is just crazy. And then, but it's still got to be the right product on multiple other fronts. Like, hey, the performance got to be there. The controls got to be there. The durability has to be there. It's got to withstand up to who we are as a brand, like nothing but heavy duty. But it's still got to withstand to that warranty life that we expect and the users demand from us. So it's like a combination of everything. You can't just look at like one thing as a team and as a company and say, hey, we're just going to make really good performing product, but if you don't make it last what the user's looking for as well, like those are things we continue to, work through, and making sure that we look at as a 360, what's that total experience somebody has with the Milwaukee Tool brand.
Yeah, we're not in the kindest environments in the world either, right? Those things go through some abuse. I hate to say it, but it's very, very true. These tools go through a lot each and every day, and the durability side is absolutely huge.
Yeah. We know that the environments that these users are in are different than what you see with mechanical, electrical, and plumbing users as well. Like, you have more brake cleaner, you have oils, grease, solvents, and ensuring that the tool can withstand in those environments is different. We've actually, released a lot of new products around trying to solve that specific problem. So you might not know it, but any fuel ratchet, any fuel impact comes with chemical resistant polymers in the plastic and the overmold to make sure that they don't dissolve over time, making the tool last longer. We have
I did know
several
that.
battery packs. Yeah. Several battery packs that have been released over the last 3 to 5 years, that are going to withstand better in a shop environment. You have a M1850 chemical resistant pack. We have for M18, or that was for M18, and then you have the new Forge packs for M18. Those 3 packs are all chemical resistant housings and delivered on a promise that is those will be the best battery packs in the industry, and for Milwaukee Tool. And then on the M12 front, anything that's the M12 high output packs, those are also come with the chemical resistant polymer, and they're gonna live that life that a user expects in those shop environments better than anything else we've ever created.
You always hear about the evolution in battery technology, right? And I'm interested to learn what that actually means, right? It's you're making more power that lasts longer in a smaller package, but how do you do that? How are batteries that complicated to be able to continually try to evolve on? It's hard for me to truly understand in those little bitty batteries how they last for so long and how they are so powerful.
Yeah, man, there's a full team dedicated to that here at Milwaukee Tool. You can just break down a pack, and pack design is one really critical piece, right? The overall mechanical structure, pack design, designing for, whether it's shop durability or job site durability, making sure it handles drops, vibration, being able to be moved around if you're doing mobile service or mobile work, right? It's got to be able to, sit in a van and be able to be shaken going down the road. So the mechanical design or pack durability side is really critical. The electronic side to a battery are also super critical. Making sure that, you can balance and control the power output of that pack and ensure that you're delivering it to the tool is super critical. And then the third piece of this is the cell. We work with some of the largest cell companies in the world to get our cells, and making sure that they're designed specifically for power tools. But if we want to go a lot deeper with that, we'll have to get you connected with our battery team. They can probably go layers and miles deeper than I can.
That would be an episode that would go so far over my head that I'm not sure that I would be able to really do a good job trying to articulate that to the general public.
Yeah.
But
I don't want to do it a disservice because they do fantastic work, and I think if they would be able to go real deep with you on that one.
Yeah, and that's same thing here, right? I think everybody knows how advanced that technology is, especially people that have used the old technology before, that you see the advancements and how impressive it is. And it's really, I think a lot of times you're like, I know it's really, really good, so I'm just going to buy it and maybe not fully understand it. But it is a very huge shout out to your batteries team, because that is something that I think has been a game changer, not only for one specific tool, just for the capability of bringing on a bunch of other stuff that you wouldn't have been able to otherwise.
Yeah, and I think the best promise we have at Milwaukee Tool is, users are making investment into our system and our brand, right? And M18 and M12 have been fully and forwards and backwards compatible since 2008. So whatever tool you're putting on, if it's M12, it's going to be compatible. If it's M18, it's going to be compatible. So like that's the best brand promise, and we deliver upon it better than any of our competitors in the industry. Just like that focus from the leadership team to say we're not going to break compatibility and we're going to maintain focus. And it takes a huge investment from us to be able to do it, but it's the right thing. Like we know people are investing in our brand, and like we want to like make sure that they know we really appreciate it, and we're going to continue to protect their investment.
Yeah, I just had the Milwaukee website up on the other screen, and it is crazy how much time you could spend out there just looking through all of the different things available and kind of dream a little bit, right? If anybody's ever looking for anything for Father's Day, go check that out, because that is really like that. I think that's every person's dream, is to have the whole array of Milwaukee, because there's some just amazing stuff.
Yeah, I like to say we work on big kid toys sometimes. Like
I think you're right.
Like
I think
people
you're
get
right.
so excited when you show up and you can deliver something that's, like they're like, I never thought this would be cordless, or holy crap, I never like thought Milwaukee would actually make this. They get so jacked up, and it's like that's where it's really fun, especially when something you learned about in the field and you brought it to the field, and then somebody's like, I love this feature, this part. You're like, yes.
It worked. So yes. And I think that kind of brings me to my next point, which is the amount of loyalty. And if anybody's ever read the book Raving Fans, Milwaukee Tool has captured that part, right? You have raving fans, and I'll use a personal example. We went to a guy's trip, right? We went UTVing out in West Virginia, and a lot of my friends were people from other industries, other trades. And we get down to West Virginia, and one of my buddies doesn't use Milwaukee, uses a different brand, and everybody else used Milwaukee. And the amount of heckling that this person took from the Milwaukee crowd that was down there was insane. And when you take a step back and you think about it, you're like, this is a tool company that has driven those raving fans to where they are so dedicated and so proud and passionate about the brand that it has kind of evolved past just a tool brand. And I look down the road from Milwaukee Tool at a brand like Harley Davidson, right? Where another Milwaukee company, that Milwaukee, Wisconsin company, that had that really, really loyal customer base. And it's really neat to see a tool brand elevate themselves to a point to where you do have people that will get mad defending Milwaukee Tool, right? It is just insane to see that evolution.
Yeah, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, I think it's awesome to look through all the social media following that we have now and seeing what people do, all the cool tattoos that people have. It's just it's a testament to, continuing to deliver upon like what people really care about. Like when you deliver a solution that, delivers upon what they're trying to do every day, and, those things continue to expand. And that's the cool part of the brand, is like seeing us continue to live and instill those cultures to, the younger people that are coming in. Like, hey, it's still about the person at the end. It's still about the user in the shop or the person on the job site. And as long as a company, we don't lose sight of that, that's what's most critical, because at the end of the day, that's what it's for and who it's for. It's that person in the shop or in the job site, and making sure we're doing the right thing for them.
It's simple to say, but not to do, right? Like everything you're saying sounds very simple, but there's so much intricacy. There's so much detail that goes into that I almost feel like you're not doing it service, because it is really, really hard to do. And it's really hard to take something that is feedback from a customer and implement it into your product line or into the way that you run your business and conduct your business. But that is a master lesson from Milwaukee on how to like to everybody, right? You guys have just done it better than most in terms of taking customer input and actually making it effectively work in their daily lives.
Yeah, and I think it just speaks to how we try to live and breathe the job site or the shop, and on a day-to-day basis, make sure we stay grounded. And I can't speak to what others do. I can speak to what we do, and the beliefs that we have here. But continuing to, every time a new leadership development person comes into the company, because we really focus on bringing people up through the company, so we can train them on all the how to interact with the customer, who's the brand of Milwaukee Tool, what do we instill as a culture, speed or urgency, being candid, ensuring that we're always leveraging external in communication. What does it matter to the user? Yeah, it's really hard in practice, but I think we execute it very well, and we instill that culture, and we live and breathe it every single day.
Social media has added a whole layer of complexity to this, and it's helped drive brand awareness. I know that because I watch a lot of YouTube videos that have Milwaukee somewhere present in it. And one of the things that I also think is that some of it has to drive you crazy, because there are things that content creators will use the tools for that in no way were they meant for. I watched a YouTube short the other day, or some type of video, where they had a Milwaukee drill physically tied to another brand drill, and they were doing a like power off or something. And I'm like, oh my goodness. How do people come up with this stuff?
Oh man, that's not the least of it. We see a little bit of everything, on social media. Like there's that example. There's 100 examples, but I think the thing I always take away from social media is the passion for the brand, but it's also sometimes the way a customer can communicate if we're not listening in the right areas, or if we, might have missed something. Like there's still something to learn from it. Now you got to read everything with a little bit with a grain of salt, and sometimes we got to reach out to them directly and get connected to do that. But there's still something to learn there, right? Like they are still a user, and really important to us, that we can't forget. Like there is a problem that exists, and sometimes it's as infuriating as it is at select points, but it's still really cool to see the following and the passion, because if people weren't passionate about it, they wouldn't be on there posting. So like, hey, I'd rather have it this way than the other way.
That's a great outlook on it.
Rather see people posting and being excited, and hey, if they weren't upset about it and so upset to post, like that's a good problem. We can work with that.
Just another way to keep your finger on the pulse a little bit too, right? In a way that maybe you're reaching somebody that you normally wouldn't be able to physically get to see. You can kind of get that reaction, good, bad, or indifferent, right? And so that's a really unique outlook on it, and I think it's really true.
Yeah, I mean, it is true, and I always try to find the positive in it, right? And that is something that, like, sometimes somebody can't get a hold of us or doesn't know where to get a hold of us, and this is their opportunity to come speak with the brand or to the brand, and it's an opportunity we got to take to listen.
I've worked with brands, or maybe not worked with, I won't say it that way. I've used big brands before, and it is infuriating when you can't get in touch with the right person, or you can't talk to somebody that, feels like you can get help by. And, we see it in the automotive world. I know my dealer friends that are out there know sometimes dealing with an OE, like it can be a really big struggle. But the fact that you'll take the time as a bigger company to actually take that customer feedback, not have some level of arrogance where you think that nothing's wrong with your product, and be able to constantly improve. I do think that's really why you've gotten to where you are today as a company, because you actually were really impactful and effective in taking that feedback and putting it into action. So I think from the general consumer's point of view, I'll just say thank you. Like that's been such a refreshing thing from a company to see that type of reaction.
Yeah, appreciate that. And I know like it's probably tiring for certain teams that, we have a really good social media team that it's engaged and, you know, we're only as good as like the weakest link. So like we always have to be working collectively as a group and working through things as a brand and what's the best thing to do. And again, it starts and ends with the person in the shop, person in the field. And the more we can understand what they do, how they do it, how we can solve their needs and deliver solutions for them, like that's what build the brand to kind of where we are. And the leadership team has here at Milwaukee Tool, really supports that and like helps embolden that vision and tries to empower us. Like, hey, when that stuff comes up, like go fix it. Like that's what's fun. Like issues happen, things happen. Like we're at a company. Not everything's sunshine and rainbows. Like when things come up, like let's get the right people in the room and let's figure out how to, create a solution for the problem that's at hand.
Do you have any advice on how to ask for feedback? And the reason I ask that is a lot of times, especially with technicians, right? A lot of times they know what they need, but they maybe can't articulate it. They can't explain it. And so you're trying to get that out of them. And at times that can be really, really challenging. So any ideas on how to approach that conversation so you do get that good, honest feedback?
Oh man, that is a really good question. For me, I always focus on like macro to micro discussion, right? Like, what are you trying to accomplish, or what is the thing at hand we're trying to talk about, and how can I go 3 layers deep? Is my uh, typical angle, right? I want to understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, and then I want to know 3 reasons why, or how else could you do it? Um, and trying to unpack that, and every individual is different, right? Like you look at the way people learn, there's, primary ways people learn, whether it's visual, audio, or you like reading. Um, so you got to like really unpack, like, hey, what is this person in front of me and how are they talking and how do they, need questions asked? So usually like even if we're asking questions and somebody's like, well, I do it this way or that. And you kind of have to find the way to, build the relationship enough so that you can, you know, get them to open up as a person and ask the questions in different ways that fits their how they think, how they process information, or sometimes it's grabbing a tool and being like, if I wanted to do this myself, do I do it like this? Do I do it like this? And trying to get them to see like, okay, and then they start to explain or coach and teach, because then really they're the expert. If you can get them to coach and teach you as a product manager or like a Milwaukee Tool product manager how to do it, that's phenomenal. Now we can take that information, we can bring it back to our internal teams and we can work through that with them, what they're trying to do. And then that made that whole project team just that much better on trying to solve that problem.
That is wonderful advice. Really, really good advice. And as you're talking about it, I'm thinking in my head of different scenarios where I could have approached something differently based on that advice, right? And I think my tendency is to jump in and try to show somebody rather than taking a step back and just really watching them. And it, as you're saying that, it really resonated with me. I think it probably will with a lot of people because it's the natural thing to do a lot of times. And if you can just maybe slow down a little bit and just kind of take that feedback that they're giving, then it allows you to ask the right questions and it allows you to really see a process all the way through. And I would think allow you to make those incremental changes that'll really help people out.
Yeah, like I know personally, I am a learn by doing. Like I learn on
Same.
the spot, on the fly. I have to try things, right? But not everybody's that way. And just starting to understand, hey, how does that person learn? And sometimes you're talking to somebody for 30 minutes, sometimes you're talking to them for 20 minutes or 5 minutes. So those conversations have to kind of change and morph and evolve depending on what's happening like at that time. And you also got to take into account like, hey, what's going on in that person's life? If they're like, hey, I don't want to talk to you today, like, cool, come back another time.
I think we've all come across that scenario a lot. And in general, I think everything you've talked about over the course of this podcast has been really informative and really helpful to help understand Milwaukee as a brand. But I also think for those of you that are listening, there are a lot of principles that you can take back into your shops and implement and be able to use some of what has made Milwaukee Tool such an incredible brand and use it in our own businesses to help us make it a better place for people to work, to make it better for our customers, to make it just a better experience all around. And again, I think that's what's driven that loyalty and that fire behind wanting to support Milwaukee Tools, because you are such a good brand at listening and really evolving and knowing that today is going to be the end of your development of tools. You're going to keep pushing the boundaries. You're going to keep doing great things. So a huge credit to you, the entire Milwaukee Tool team. I am such a huge fan of everything that you guys do that I have to apologize for a little bit of fanboying today, because I am a big fan of everything that you do. And I just appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us for the podcast here today.
Absolutely, Jay. Hey, we are not here without a huge thanks to your audience, to the users in the shops, the shop owners. And, if you want to get connected with Milwaukee Tool, come find us, whether it's on social media, whether it's on MilwaukeeTool.com, or get it connected to Jay and get connected to us. Like, we're always listening. We're always here to support. We love the opportunity to be here and, spend an hour with you guys, and wish we could spend 5 hours, but much appreciated.
You and I would not have a problem filling a 5-hour gap. I can promise you that. So we'll have to have you back on again here at some point in the near future. And I'm sure there'll be some exciting product announcement that you're coming with, and we'll try to make sure that we shine a light on that, because it is really helpful to our audience. And I can't thank you and the team enough for joining us here today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jay. Appreciate the time.
That wraps up another episode of Beyond the Wrench. If you liked this episode, please show your support by rating and following the podcast. You can also watch the video interviews on WrenchWay's YouTube channel. Speaking of WrenchWay, did you know Beyond the Wrench is managed and produced by the WrenchWay team? WrenchWay is an online community dedicated to promoting and improving automotive and diesel careers. We help technicians find the best shops to work at, and we also help auto, diesel, and CTE instructors get more support from local industry. You can learn more by visiting wrenchway.com.